Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with another course breakdown. This time we head back to Mexico to a new golf course, a place we've never seen before in the professional landscape. We've got ourselves El Cardonal at Diamante, the home of this year's Worldwide Technologies Championship, and gonna make sure you have all the info that you need for this week to go out there and get your research started. Of course, anytime we have a brand new venue, there are a lot of question marks up there in the air, but what we're gonna focus on here is what we actually know about the venue, what can be actionable to go out there and get your research started, whether it's for DFS or out there for some of your outright bets. So a lot to get into here. We'll go hole by hole at some point, talk about some of the details, key stats and comp courses, and make sure that we're all on the same page. A lot to get into, like I said, so let's go ahead and get this thing started without further ado. El Cardonal is a resort-style course by pretty much every metric. So good place to start is with how easy I expect this to play. Without winds out there, you're going to see something like 20 under par winning this. It is a par 72. You do have the 4 par 5s to work with, but more than anything, you have massive fairways, massive greens, which means there's little room to make mistakes. In terms of your greens, they are over 8,300 square foot per green, and some of the fairways are upwards of 80 yards wide. You have one of them out there that's over 110 yards wide, going to be one of the widest fairways that you've ever seen, and on average, even the narrower fairways measure towards the 60-yard wide mark. So if it's a kind of golf course where driving accuracy is not going to be a key defining metric, and driving distance is going to be a whole lot more important than keeping it in the short stuff, because if we take a look at some of the agronomy specs that we have from El Cardonal, there's first off no rough out there. It is all either fairway, green, or natural hazard. So when you do miss, you are going to be penalized. It's kind of like a desert style golf course, like what you'd see for some of these fall series events, like the Shriners, where if you miss, you're going to be potentially taking a drop out there. But unfortunately, those misses are like 80, 90 yards offline, which these tour players are just not used to. So it's as resort style as you're going to see. It is pretty long at 7,452 yards, but other than the pure length, maybe some wind that can kick up, this is going to be as easy as you're going to see. That is my hot take right off the bat. If we get props on this golf course, I'm going to be trying to take a lot of unders, some overs on birdies, because from some of the overhead views that I've seen, the greens are extremely flat. They've got past pollen from tip to toe, which means you're going to have slow receptive greens out there. That's just a byproduct of the past pollen surface, something that I'm very familiar on down here in South Florida. So with soft greens, massive target areas, and greens that are probably going to be easy to make putts on, I'm expecting these guys to nuke this golf course. Like I said, the one real X factor I think you could have would be the wind, because of how non-protected the golf course is. Being a desert style golf course, there are no trees to go out there and block that wind. There's no real build outs out there either, because the Worldwide Technologies Championship is not the biggest, most attended event out there on the PGA Tour. So there could be a little bit of wind carnage, right, because of that lack of protection. But as of some of the early forecasts, it doesn't look like we're going to get that carnage. So expect this to be as easy as what you're going to find. Birdie or better percentage aggressive players are going to be the types of players that you're looking for. And then in terms of niche stats, right, anytime you have a longer course, right, distance is going to be especially helpful. And then I think it comes down to putting, right? Easy tracks, birdie or better fests, as we like to call them. John Rahm hates these kind of, contest, these tournaments, but it's a putting contest, right? It's essentially what we get when conditions get this easy. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. It's a longer resort style golf course, pretty similar to some of the other golf tournaments that we've had down here in Mexico. I'd say the one real difference between this course and maybe what we had at Mayakoba would be how much room you have off the tee. Kind of like for the Mexico Open last year where we had Vedanta Vallarta, that golf course had extremely wide corridors. It's the same kind of story. So if you're looking for a comp course, I think that golf tournament, right, the Mexico Open, is probably a little bit better for your comparisons than what you had for Mayakoba, because this is as easy as what you're going to get. And Mayakoba, under firm and fast conditions, can be extremely difficult, right? And I think even in the hardest wind conditions out there for this week, you're going to see a pretty low scoring average. Now we'll quickly go hole by hole, give you an idea for some of the shots required, but I'll just say some of these overhead views, not the best compared to some of the other, courses that we have on Pro Visualizer here. But bear with me here with some of the low resolution pictures. Hole number one's a par 5. easily reachable by the field. The one thing I'll say is even though it is in a desert, don't expect there to be a ton of rollout in the fairways. Paspalum, like I said, tends to be a lot more receptive than what any other grass type's going to give you. So compared to most desert golf courses, you're going to get a little bit less rollout, right? You're going to get a little bit more receptiveness into the greens. So it's not all a bad thing, right? Maybe your drives end up going like 5 to 10 yards less in terms of your distance, but you're going to have a lot better time trying to stop balls onto greens. So 545, most players can get there in 2, and it's a pretty gentle handshake to start your round. Hole 2, not so much a handshake, but you'll see why I think the scoring is going to be so easy here. It's 205 yards, and it's an extremely large green. It's close to 10,000 square foot. It's extremely flat. It's kind of hard to get an idea for that, right, with some of these overhead views. But if you take a look at any videos from site, as there are a few out there on YouTube, you'll get a good picture here, right? You've got a solid like 10 yards of room around the green here. So if you miss to the back left and you get a horrible bounce into the gunk out there, right, that desert, you might get a little bit unlucky, but any other miss and you're just fine, right? Let's say you hit the green, it trickles off the back, it's an easy up and down, right? There's no real easy to hide pin locations here. The one real bad miss, I guess, would be short, right? Leaving it in front of the bunker, right? You'd have a little short-sided shot over this bunker, but outside of that, every pin location is wide open from chips. So it's as easy, straightforward to set up as you're going to see on the PGA Tour, which is to accommodate resort-style guests. Hole 3 is 354. If you take a direct line to the green, it's a little bit shorter than that. So if you go ahead and move that, you'll see it's just 324 to the front, which means you have, you're going to have a few players that try and sniff the surface, that maybe try and, shy off towards the left a little bit here, because missing over towards this target wouldn't be the, worst miss whatsoever. Have a little 30, 40 yard chip onto the green. A lot of players, though, are just going to take iron out here, right? Leave it in front of these fairway bunkers. If there's one real defense out here in terms of like the actual strategy, the actual setup of the golf course, Tiger Woods did a pretty good job with the fairway bunkers. Meant to mention it before, he is the course architect here, good old Tiger Woods. But unless you're hitting it into these fairway bunkers and you're leaving an awkward chip, this is a birdie hole like any other. Hole 4 is 491, so this is one of the few holes where distance does come into play. You can see that the tee shot is set up to the left over here, avoiding the right side fairway bunker. But I mean, worst case, you hit it in the fairway bunker and you're 180 yards out, right? These faces, they're not very steep. It's pretty simple to get out of them even with a long iron, so I wouldn't expect a lot of players to have much trouble there. Hole 5, 445. It's a medium length par 4. You're going to have like a, 9 iron in at the most. Hole 6, 604 yards, a little bit less reachable than some of the other par 5s, but once again, pretty straightforward birdie look. It's got a slightly awkward shaped green. I mean, it's got like 2 halves to it. It looks like a little butterfly out there from the overhead view, but other than the awkward shape to this green, it's a par 5, right? Should have a birdie look. Hole 7 is 503 yards. Once again, it's a longer par 4, but look how much room you have. This is one of those like 80-yard wide fairways where really you'd have to try to miss it. It's like the 18 at the US Open last year where Wyndham Clark literally hit a, duck. Not duck hook. He hit an absolute slice out there to the right, and he still hit the fairway. You could hit that same shot and hit the fairway here. So I know it's long. I know the scorecard yardage can be a little bit intimidating, but you're hitting a long iron into a massive green complex with no trouble around it. I mean, look at this, guys. There's a bunker like 50 yards short, but there's nothing here. There's like 30 yards to each side of the green where it's all fairway here. There's no rough on property where you're just hitting a little chip shot and trying to get up and down, right? Pin locations that are short-sided, let's say you hit it to the left and you've got a left pin location, that might be a little bit tricky, but you're hitting off the fairway, off past Pollen where you can put a lot of spin on it. I mean, it's tricky, but it's not impossible. Hole 8 is 486. It's another longer par 4. The more that you shave off the right side here, the shorter the hole plays. But once again, it's a massive fairway area. It's hard to miss. Hole number 9 is 204 yards. It is a longer par 3. You do have this bunker that creeps into the left over here, which, a back left pin location would be especially devious. But anything off to the right is really straightforward. If you're starting on hole number 10, you've got a drivable par 4, kind of like the other drivable par 4. You do have these bunkers in front of the green, which can make the choice a little bit interesting off the tee. But even if you're laying up, it's a degreed wedge at the very most. Hole number 11 is 193. It's one of the shorter par 3s, actually. But once again, I mean, other than the bunkers, but bunkers, by the way, for tour players are not that difficult, right? Up and down, they're just fine. Well, 12, 4, 11, shorter par 4, driver wedge, or maybe even a 3-wood wedge in. Hole 13 is 476. It is another slight dog leg, but once again, this is like a 100-yard wide fairway. I mean, like, just let's take this cross section right here. You have like 100 yards to land a 3-wood out there. Shouldn't be a problem for these tour players. Hole 14 is 580. It's a par 5, but reachable in 2. The layup zone's over here to the left. You could lay up over here to the right as well. Either way is an easy way to leave a wedge. Most players will go for it in 2, though. Hole 15 is 461. It's a rinse and repeat, right? Just massive fairway, 1 bunker to worry about, and then nothing around the green. Hole 16, 154, your shortest par 3. You have a little, we call these arroyos here. So this natural area that you see, you had the Barrancas, right, at the U.S. Open. This week, you're going to hear the word arroyo over and over and over again. Okay, if you're playing a drinking game, make it arroyo the word. It's just a natural area where water runs through when it floods. Because it's bedrock, kind of like what you have in Vegas, right? When it rains, it floods. You get that flash flooding that happens. The arroyos are where that water runs through. So the play is not really affected, right, if that were to happen. They had a tropical storm come through a few days ago, so they should be cleaning that up by the time we get to tournament play here. But you have to hit over one of those arroyos here, so if you hit it in there, you're done. Like, I mean, that's worse than a barranca when it comes to some of the foliage out there, but this is the only hole where that really comes into play. Hole 17 is 467. It's another medium length par 4, pretty straightforward. The barranca, like you can see, it's like next to holes, but it's not really next to the green, unless I guess you could say that on 17 it gets a little bit close there on the left side, but in just very isolated scenarios it usually doesn't come into play. And then hole 18 is another par 5. This is the shortest of the bunch, should be the easiest hole on the course, and if you're not reaching this in 2, I don't know what to tell you, right? You shouldn't be a tour player if you can't reach this green in 2. So we'll be easy. I'll probably play to like a 4.1, maybe even a 4.2 average, and I'd expect to see maybe even 10, maybe 15% of eagles made at this kind of hole. Now that we've seen the golf course, let's go over some of the key stats that I'm using in my models this week. So first off, we've got shots gained approach, which is almost always going to be number 1. But the important part here is that distance matters, right? The par 3s, except for the last par 3, right, are all relatively long. And on top of that, most of your par 4s are at least a mid to a long iron in hand. So it's not like this golf course is going to completely lay over, right? It's not like a 7,000 yard, resort style golf course, but kind of like what you have at Corrales, it's also relatively long. In fact, it's nearly 7,700 yards and still plays as one of the easiest courses on the PGA Tour. So long iron play is going to matter. It's how you're going to set up those 10 to 15 foot birdie looks. But either way, I don't think it's like going to be a difficult golf course, right? So just because you see a ton of long irons being hit, don't equate that to this being a difficult kind of test. And number 2, you've got shots gained off the tee. I'm mostly looking at distance in terms of a metric. This golf course is wide open. Tried to show you guys just how wide some of the corridors can be. And though on a few of the drivable par 4s, off the tee is going to be important, it's not nearly as important as what you have with approach play. So if there's anything you're going to look at a new golf course, right, it's always kind of hard to get a read on what to expect. Make it approach play, right? It's the most consistent stat from week to week anyways, so you can really never go wrong with using approach play. But outside of that, right, distance, I think, is maybe the one other, cherry on top that you might want to use in your model. Outside of that, guys, it's going to be hard to guess what happens, right? I think because it's looks like a really straightforward test, that putting is going to be important, but maybe it plays harder than what we're expecting. So you can see I have putting as the number 3 key stat, but just know that this kind of week is a little bit tough to trust your models on because we don't have that data to work off of, right? We don't have a even 1 year sample size to go off of here. So a lot of this is speculation. And anytime we're on pass palm, they run the green slow. So if you're going to look at putting stats, look at pass palm grass, but if you don't have a huge sample on a player when it comes to pass palm, then look at slow greens, right? These greens are going to run maybe 10, maybe 11 on the stimp meter, I'd imagine, this week. So in terms of quantifiable things that we know are going to come into play, we know there's going to be long irons in hand. We know that distance is most likely going to be pretty important. And then putting at easy golf courses is typically important too. So that's why, those are number 1 through 3 in my modeling for this week. But just know that the models maybe a little bit less important the first time around at a golf course. And then in terms of comps, we've got 3 on here, and they're all, these Mexican Paspalum type of golf courses. So first off, we got the Corrales GC. That's the home of the Corrales Punta Cana Championship. That's over in the Dominican Republic. It's Paspalum from tip to toe, and it's a super long golf course. Still plays easy. It is very, very comparable to what we're going to get this week. So in terms of a comp, it is by far the number 1 course that I'm looking at. Number 2, you have the home of the Mexico Open last year, right? Vedanta Vallarta. Another wide open Paspalum golf course. This one is in Mexico, so you have the geographical similarities right between the 2 events. But more than that, it's a resort style, wide open, easy kind of golf course that when the wind kicks up, can protect it because there's no protection out there. It's the same exact story this week. So, Corrales, Vedanta, I think are solid comps there at number 1 and 2, but unfortunately we don't have a massive sample to work with either, right? Larger sample with Corrales than what we have with Vedanta, but neither is really a massive sample that we can rely on. And lastly, the smallest sample of all 3 is the Grand Reserve Golf Club that we haven't seen for quite some time. We have no shots gained from it because it is the home of the Puerto Rico Open, right? An alternate field event. But this is the kind of golf course that has Paspalum from tip to toe. It's relatively long, same kind of ballpark when it comes to your distance, and it favors a lot of the same kind of players. You've had guys like Victor Hovland that's been very successful on Paspalum for his career. Tony Finau has been a really good Paspalum player, right? This is just another sample of that Paspalum grass that we can try and pull some of those finishes from. So, like I said, with the modeling, right, the comps, the same kind of way, right? Probably a little bit less reliant this week, right? Probably a little bit less important in your models than what you would have for most weeks, just because of the sample, just because we don't even know what to expect from El Cardonal. But of course, when we're trying to build projections out, when we're trying to find pieces of value for DFS and out there for outright bets, right, we have to speculate a little bit, right? We have to try and find a way to find our set of players in any given week. And I think that using Paspalum grass and these, Caribbean style events is a pretty good way to go out there and do so. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the course breakdown this week. It's been a minute since we've done one of these because we've been here in the fall swing, and also I already have course breakdowns up for most of the events, but we have ourselves a new track. Wanted to make sure that everyone had all the research that they need for this week to go out there and have themselves a week. So just look forward to even more content throughout the week on the channel. We will have some DFS stuff up, also a weekly live stream there Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So all the usual content that you're used to seeing will be dropping on top of this course breakdown. Just wanted to bring you guys this extra info, and we had the time to get it done, so went out there and produced this in a few hours. But I appreciate all the support here on the channel. Go out there, smash that like button if you haven't already, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, well, make sure you do so you don't miss any of that content when it drops. Like I said, DFS content dropping all the time, course breakdowns, and also plenty of NFL content that I'm producing both for Showdown and for the main slates. Like I said, appreciate the support here, guys. Best of luck out there for your outrights or for your DFS exposure, and let's have ourselves a week at the Worldwide Technologies Championship.